Hey, welcome to a new video. History is filled with examples of human errors that have had significant consequences. Whether it's individuals making personal mistakes or organizations committing crucial blunders, mistakes are inevitable in human existence. Sometimes these errors result in minor repercussions, while other times the impact is many times greater. Are you new to this channel? Make sure to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And before we start, also like the video. It's widely known that J.K. Rowling's Harry Potter series became a global phenomenon and inspired an entire generation of readers. However, before the first book was published in 1997, J.K. Rowling faced a series of rejections from publishers. Reportedly, she received as many as 12 rejections before finally being accepted by Bloomsbury. One of the reasons she received so many rejections was that her manuscript didn't conform to the typical standards of the publishing industry, and was longer than most children's novels at that time. However, this didn't discourage her from pursuing her dream of publishing Harry Potter. She continued to work on the manuscript, and eventually found a publisher who believed in her vision. In hindsight, it's clear that the decision to publish Harry Potter was a wise one. The Harry Potter series sold over 500 million copies worldwide and has been translated into more than 80 languages. It's since been adapted into a successful film franchise, theme park attractions, and merchandise, securing its place as one of the most beloved and successful book series of all time. In recent years, cryptocurrencies such as Bitcoin and Ethereum have gained tremendous popularity and attention in the mainstream media. However, things can also go wrong in the financial world. In the first incident, Crypto.com, a Hong Kong-based trading platform, accidentally sent $400 million worth of digital coins to customers in February 2021. The company attributed the mistake to a system glitch that processed a false transaction, resulting in the massive transfer of funds. Although the company quickly realized its error and asked customers to return the funds, some customers refused to do so, leading to disputes and delays in resolving the issue. In the second incident, a cryptocurrency company in Australia accidentally sent $10 million worth of digital coins to a customer, instead of the intended amount of $100. The mistake was caused by a typographical error, and the company took over 7 months to discover and rectify the error. The customer was reportedly unaware of the mistake and spent some of the funds, but eventually returned the excess coins after the company contacted her to request their return. The incident caused significant embarrassment and reputational damage to the company, which had to publicly apologize and offer the customer monetary compensation as restitution. In March 2021, the container ship Ever Given got stuck in the Suez Canal, blocking the important maritime route for several days. The Suez Canal is crucial for world trade, connecting Europe and Asia and providing an essential bypass around the southern tip of Africa. It's estimated that 12% of the world trade and nearly 10% of global oil supply pass through the canal annually. The ship, measuring 1,312 feet or 400 meters in length and being one of the largest container ships in the world, was en route to Rotterdam when it got stuck in the canal due to strong winds and a sandstorm. This created a blockage in the canal, causing significant disruptions in global trade, impacting oil prices and transportation costs, among others. It also highlighted the vulnerability of a major global trade route, through which a significant portion of world trade passes annually. Efforts were made to refloat the ship, but it was only 6 days later when it was eventually freed. Estimates suggest that the daily cost of the blockage ranged from $9 billion to $15 billion in delayed trade. Many car enthusiasts dream of one day sitting behind the wheel of a Lamborghini. With their stunning designs, powerful engines, and exclusive status, Lamborghini sports cars represent the epitome of luxury. Unfortunately, owning such a prestigious car remains an unattainable dream for many due to the high price tags associated with them. But as seen in this video, there's also people who decided to destroy a $700,000 Lamborghini with hammers. According to the story, the owner had grown frustrated with the car because he couldn't resolve its engine problems. In another video, we see a Lamborghini driving through a flooded road. The car's owner apparently has enough money not to care if the water reaches the windshield. But the next Lamborghini owner has the worst luck. During Hurricane Ian in September 22 in Florida, heavy storm surges were measured. A homeowner named Ernie had parked his expensive $1 million McLaren P1 in his garage. He shared pictures on social media showing the bright yellow car floating in the middle of a sea of water on the street. NANFANG'AO Bridge is a suspension bridge in Taiwan that collapsed on October 1, 2019. The bridge was constructed in 1998 and served as an important connection to the fishing water port in NANFANG'AO. However, something went wrong when an oil tanker was crossing the bridge, causing one of the suspension cables to break and the bridge to tilt, leading to its complete collapse. The Taiwanese government launched an investigation into the incident, which revealed that the contractor responsible for maintaining the bridge had failed to conduct regular inspections and upkeep. The investigation also found that the bridge's design contained several errors, including the use of steel cables that were too thin to bear the weight of the bridge. These errors resulted from not considering the effects of corrosion, vibrations, and wind forces on the bridge's structure. The Deepwater Horizon oil spill was a catastrophic event that occurred in the Gulf of Mexico on April 20, 2010. Deepwater Horizon was an offshore drilling rig operated by the international oil and gas company BP. A massive explosion occurred, creating an enormous oil spill that lasted for over 87 days. An estimated 4.9 million barrels of crude oil flowed into the ocean, making it the largest marine oil spill in history. The environmental consequences were devastating. The contaminated oil affected food sources and habitats of marine animals and accumulated in salt marshes, mangroves, and other coastal areas. The disaster had repercussions on industries throughout the Gulf Coast region, and the total costs were estimated in the tens of billions of dollars. The US government launched an investigation into the incident, with BP being held responsible for the disaster. In September 2014, BP reached a settlement with the US government for $20 billion, the largest environmental settlement in US history. Castle Bravo was a hydrogen bomb test conducted by the United States on Bikini Atoll on March 1, 1954. The test was part of a series of nuclear weapons tests and was intended as a demonstration of the power and effectiveness of the hydrogen bomb. However, the Castle Bravo test proved to be a major mistake. It was expected that the bomb would have an explosion force of 6 megatons, but in reality, it had a force of approximately 15 megatons. This made it the most powerful nuclear bomb ever detonated by the United States, and one of the largest in history. Due to this miscalculation, the explosion caused significant damage to nearby inhabited islands, and resulted in substantial contamination of the surrounding area, with radioactive fallout. The immediate effect of radiation exposure included burns and radiation sickness in individuals near the explosion or who inhaled the radioactive fallout. The explosion also killed many people on nearby islands and forced others to relocate, including the residents of Bikini Atoll, who were relocated to other islands. An airline company mistakenly sold thousands of business-class tickets for a fraction of the regular price, leading to a surge of bookings and significant financial losses. This massive error could be attributed to just one employee, a staff member of the airline who had accidentally entered the wrong price for the ticket on the company's website, resulting in a substantial discount which quickly caught attention and was shared on social media. In total, 10,000 business-class tickets were sold for flights between Asia and the United States. The tickets, which would normally cost thousands of dollars each, were sold for only a few $100s. Within hours, thousands of customers had purchased the discounted tickets. By the time the airline discovered the mistake, thousands of customers had already bought the discounted tickets, and the company faced the challenging decision. On one hand, the airline was legally obligated to honor the sales and deliver the promised flights to the customers. On the other hand, the substantial financial losses resulting from the error threatened to have a major impact on the company's financial performance. Despite the challenges, the airline eventually decided to provide the discounted tickets to customers. The total cost of the error was estimated to be in the tens of millions of dollars. Excite was a company that had the opportunity to acquire Google in its early days. The potential acquisition took place in 1999, when Google was still a young and relatively unknown search engine. At that time, the co-founders of Google, Larry Page and Sergey Brin, offered to sell their company to Excite for $1 million. However, the executives of Excite declined the offer because they considered the price to be too high. Later that same year, they offered Excite to buy Google for $750,000, significantly less than their previous asking price. Excite once again turned down the offer, with George Bell, then CEO of Excite, reportedly stating that he didn't want the search engine to be too good because they wanted users to keep coming back to use Excite. This decision is now widely regarded as one of the biggest missed opportunities in the history of the tech sector, as Google grew to become one of the most successful companies of all time, revolutionized the search engine industry, and expanded into various other areas. Excite, on the other hand, eventually became irrelevant and was acquired in 2004. MV Golden Ray was a 656-foot or 200-meter-long cargo ship that capsized off the coast of Brunswick, Georgia, on September 8, 2019. The capsizing was caused by the loss of stability of the ship, causing it to heavily list and eventually top over. The ship was carrying more than 4,000 vehicles, which were loaded on the upper deck of the ship instead of being evenly distributed through the cargo hold. This imbalance caused the ship to become unstable. With too much weight on one side, the ship then listed severely, leading to its capsizing and ending up sideways in shallow water. The ship was carrying more than 1.1 million liters of fuel, and there were concerns that a fuel leak could occur. The incident had significant consequences, with the ship and its cargo of vehicles remaining stranded off the coast for over a year. Additionally, the salvage operation to remove the ship was one of the largest and most complex in history. The merger between AOL and Time Warner in the year 2000 is widely regarded as a major mistake, both in terms of financial losses for the companies and the broader implications of the merger for the media sector. At the time, AOL was a significant player in the internet and online service industry, while Time Warner was a major media conglomerate with assets such as Warner Bros., HBO, and CNN. The merger was valued at nearly $165 billion, making it the largest merger in history. The idea behind the merger was to combine these two companies into a new kind of media giant that could leverage the strengths of each company to dominate the market. What is considered one of the worst mergers in history, the companies disagreed on everything, from the business model to the culture. However, the failure of the two companies turned out to be a gain for others. Despite these challenges, the AOL and Time Warner merger did have some positive effects. One of the main ones was that it contributed to the innovation in digital media and paved a way for other media companies to invest in digital initiatives. The Tianjin blast refers to a series of massive explosions that occurred on August 12, 2015, in the northeastern Chinese port of Tianjin. The explosions took place at a warehouse owned by a logistics company, which stored large quantities of hazardous chemicals, including sodium cyanide and ammonium nitrate. The initial explosion, caused by the ignition of ammonium nitrate, was so powerful that it was registered as an earthquake with a magnitude of 2.9 and created a crater over 33 feet or 10 meters deep. It also triggered a fire that burned for days and created a huge plume of smoke visible from space. The cause was later attributed to several factors, including lax safety regulations, poor enforcement of safety standards, and a lack of transparency and oversight. At the end of 2005, Mizuho Securities, one of the largest security firms in Japan, made a costly mistake when trying to sell a single share of CONTAINERSHIP on Tokyo Stock Exchange. The trader of the company intended to sell one share for 610,000 yen, but instead entered an order to sell 610,000 shares for 1 yen each. This typo resulted in Mizuho Securities attempting to sell over $340 million worth of JCOM shares for just 1 yen each, significantly lower than the market price at the time. The Tokyo Stock Exchange initially tried to cancel the order, but ultimately failed to do so, due to Japanese securities rules. As a result, Mizuho Securities suffered enormous losses, totaling around $225 million. The incident was a major blow to the company's reputation and led to the resignation of the CEO, president, and chairman. The Japanese government also launched an investigation into the company's risk management systems and called for increased oversight of the financial sector. In addition to the resignations of the company's top officials, the incident also led to regulatory changes in Japan. The Carbuncle Cup is an annual architecture award presented by the British magazine Building Design to the worst new building in the country. The award was first given in 2006 to draw attention to poor design and planning of new buildings, and is usually awarded to buildings seen as detrimental to their surroundings. In 2015, the Walkie Talkie building, officially known as 20 Fenchurch Street, was awarded the Carbuncle Cup. The walkie-talkie is a skyscraper located in the financial district of the City of London. The building was criticized for its unusual shape, which caused sunlight to reflect onto nearby streets and buildings, creating a death ray effect that damaged properties and melted parts of cars. It also damaged the sidewalk, and a local barber even claimed that the burning rays had scorched a customer's hair outside his shop. Besides the environmental issues, the walkie-talkie's building was also criticized for its design, which was widely seen as bulky and out of place in the historic City of London. Before the unsinkable Titanic, there was the Vasa ship. Vasa was a Swedish warship built between 1626 and 1628. It was commissioned by King Gustav II Adolf, and was one of the largest ships of its time, with 64 cannons and a weight of over 1,200 tons. However, during its maiden voyage on August 10, 1628, the ship sank shortly after departure. The sinking of the ship is considered one of the greatest maritime disasters in history, and the spectacular wreck has since been salvaged and preserved as a museum in Stockholm, Sweden. So, what caused the sinking? First, the ship was designed with a high center of gravity, making it extremely unstable in the water. Additionally, the ship's cannons were placed too high in the hull, further contributing to the vessel's instability. Another factor that contributed to the ship's sinking was the lack of experience among the crew. Most men on board had never sailed on a ship as large, and many were unable to react quickly enough to the ship suddenly tilting to one side. Furthermore, the ship was carrying a large quantity of cannonballs and other heavy objects. Although the ship was very close to the shore, an estimated 30 to 150 people drowned in the disaster. In 2003, Red Lobster introduced an all-you-can-eat snow crab promotion called Endless Crab. Customers were invited to pay a fixed price for unlimited servings of crab legs, but the promotion turned out to be a costly mistake for the restaurant chain. The specific fixed price for the Endless Crab promotion offered by Red Lobster in 2003 was $22.99. The Endless Crab promotion proved to be so popular that many customers stayed for hours and consumed massive quantities. Red Lobster had underestimated its customers' appetite and the amount of snow crab needed to meet the demand. As a result, the chain had to import additional snow crab from other countries at a higher cost, eating into the profits. Additionally, the promotion caused significant operation issues for the restaurants, with some locations running out of snow crab and others facing long wait times for customers. Ultimately, the Endless Crab promotion cost Red Lobster $3.3 million in just 7 weeks, prompting the chain to cancel the promotion and rethink its marketing strategies. When it comes to oil, you already know this is going to be an expensive mistake. Volvo's interest in Norway's oil industry dates back to the early 1960s, when the company began exploring opportunities to diversify its operations beyond car manufacturing. At that time, Norway was emerging as a significant player in the oil industry, with substantial reserves of oil and gas in the North Sea. Volvo was in talks with the Norwegian government in the 1960s with the aim of buying an oil exploration license in the North Sea. However, the negotiations fell apart after the Norwegian government insisted on a joint venture agreement, where the Norwegian government would become a partial owner of the oil discovery. Volvo refused this arrangement and decided not to pursue the oil exploration license further. As a result, other companies like BP and Shell entered the agreements with the Norwegian government and became dominant players in Norway's oil industry. The Cerro Grande fire was a devastating wildfire that occurred between May 4, 2000 and July 20, 2000, in New Mexico, United States. It started as a controlled burn that got out of hand, ultimately burning approximately 43,000 hectares of land, destroying 235 homes and causing an estimated $1 billion in damages. The fire had a severe impact on the local government, with burned areas ranging from 20,000 to 90,000 of high-severity burn. The Bandelier National Monument in the Jemez Mountains in New Mexico was heavily affected by the fire. The then U.S. Secretary of the Interior, Bruce Babbitt, spoke about the fire and the danger of trying to control nature. The fire also had a significant impact on water quality and runoff in the affected areas. On March 28, 1979, a nuclear accident occurred at the 3 Mile Island nuclear power plant in Pennsylvania, USA. A malfunction in the cooling of the second reactor resulted in a partial meltdown of the reactor core, leading to the release of radioactive gases into the atmosphere. The accident was caused by a combination of technical problems and human errors. The safety systems of the plant failed to promptly detect the overheating and shut down the reactor, allowing the partial meltdown to occur. The released radioactive gases contaminated the surrounding areas, and residents within a 20-mile or 32-kilometer radius of the plant were ordered to evacuate. Over 140,000 people left the area, and the cleanup and recovery efforts were costly, with an estimated price tag of over $1 billion. This included removing contaminated soil and water and decommissioning the damaged reactor. Some radioactive materials were left behind as they were too difficult or risky to move. The incident was the worst nuclear accident in the history of the United States and sparked significant public protest and concerns about safety of nuclear energy. While there are no direct deaths or injuries resulting from the accident, it had long-lasting consequences for the surrounding community and the nuclear industry as a whole. There's expensive mistakes, and then there's causing a chain reaction that led to the worst global financial crisis since the Great Depression of the 1930s. In 2008, Lehman Brothers, a global investment bank, filed for bankruptcy. Lehman Brothers had significant investments in the subprime mortgage market, which was a bubble that burst, causing a wave of defaults and forced home foreclosures. This triggered a domino effect, with other banks and financial institutions in the United States and worldwide also experiencing significant losses. The financial crisis had far-reaching consequences, with many individuals and businesses suffering the effect of the subsequent global recession. Governments around the world took various measures to stabilize the economy, including rescuing major banks and implementing stimulus packages to promote economic growth. As housing prices started to decline and the number of defaults on subprime mortgages increased, banks and the financial institutions in the United States and worldwide suffered significant losses, leading to a credit crisis and a general lack of confidence in financial systems. The crisis quickly spread from the housing market to other sectors, including banking, stock markets, and the broader economy. The damage from the crisis was severe and long-lasting, with some estimates suggesting that the world economy lost trillions of dollars in wealth. In 2013, the NANFANG'AO shipbuilding company spent more than $3 billion on 4 submarines for the Spanish Navy. The idea was to use them for long missions to improve threat scenarios, and they had an underwater speed of 22 miles per hour, or 35 kilometers per hour. The submarine had a lot of technical gadgets. It was barely visible on the radar, it was noiseless, and it had infrared detection to remain unnoticed by vessels and control rooms as much as possible. However, there was a problem. The submarines weighed between 75 and 100 metric tons, and underwater they even weighed an incredible 2,400 metric tons. According to the engineer, this was enough to make the submarine float on the surface, but he was wrong, because the submarines appeared to be too heavy. So this cost Spain an extra $250 million to finally solve the problem. Blockbuster was the largest and most successful video store in the 90s and had more than 9,000 stores around the world. In the old days, if you wanted to watch a movie or documentary, you had to go to the video store and rent them. Later, video games were added. Only 10 years later, in the 2000s, there was more competition, including Netflix. The former CEO of the company, John Antioco, is said to have a meeting with the owners of Netflix, Reed Hastings and Marco Randolph, at the time where he had the opportunity to buy Netflix for only $50 million. But John didn't even seem to think about it, and saw it as a big joke. Netflix presented the opportunity several times to Blockbuster, but they didn't seem to be interested, and could not see the future of the video industry. Today, Netflix is the fastest growing company with a market value of over $200 billion, and Blockbuster doesn't exist anymore. Berlin-Brandenburg is a brand new airport located in Germany, which should become the largest in the country. It took 15 years to plan ahead, and in 2006, construction finally started. The idea was that they would open in 2011, but due to a lot of circumstances and bad luck, they're still not opened. The project has been constantly delayed due to legal issues, allegations of corruption, logistics errors, and hundreds of millions of euros of extra costs. The airport was initially estimated to have a 2.83 billion euros, but 7.1 billion has already been spent, so many millions of euros more than budgeted. However, the latest problems that have occurred are due to the coronavirus, which makes many airports struggle to survive. After 29 years of planning and 14 years of construction, the airport was finally opened on October 31, 2020. Apple is the largest company in the world, with a market value of over $1.5 trillion. The company was founded in 1976 by Steve Jobs, Steve Wozniak, and Ronald Wayne. Ronald Wayne is probably someone you've never heard of, but he met Steve Jobs in the 70s, and in exchange for his work, which included the very first Apple logo and the writing of the manual, he received a 10% share in the company. This would mean he would be the richest man on the earth today, but Wayne decided to sell his 10% stock almost immediately, for just $800, because he didn't have much faith in the company. However, he says he doesn't regret it, and it was the right decision at that time. But I think this mistake will stay with him his whole life. Splendid China was an amusement park that opened in 1993 near Walt Disney World in Florida. Because this park was very successful in the Chinese city of Changzhen, they decided to build it in America as well. The park was full of miniature replicas of famous Chinese locations and statues, but nowadays the park is completely deserted and destroyed. China started this project together with some American investors, and it cost them a total of $100 million to build the amusement park. Not much later after the opening, the Chinese government had bought out the American partners. Because the park was owned by China, people from Florida got problems with continuous protests. Since then, the park lost about $9 million a year, and debts became more and more. The park was finally closed in 2003, and in 2015, it sold for only a fraction of the original price. The incident of the B-2 Spirit took place in February 2008 and is considered the most expensive error of the U.S. Air Force in history. The estimated loss of the aircraft would have been about $1.4 billion. The B-2 Spirit is the most expensive airplane in the world, but also a technological miracle. It's equipped with stealth technology and special radar tech, which makes the plane virtually invisible. In 2008, the B-2 Spirit took off from the airbase in Guam, an oceanic island belonging to the United States. However, something went wrong, and the pilots had to use their ejection seats. Luckily, the pilots were fine, but the plane crashed because of this. An investigation showed that heavy rain was the cause of the problem. Because of the heavy rain, humidity entered the air data sensors, which caused the aircraft to crash. Bitcoins are digital coins that made people very rich when they bought it before the year 2016 and 2017. One of the first people who invested in Bitcoins was a British man named James Howells. In 2009, he is said to have mined more than 7,500 Bitcoins on his laptop. Because the laptop had to be turned on all the time, his girlfriend started complaining that it made too much noise. So he sold the laptop on eBay, but kept the hard drive his Bitcoins were on. However, 5 years later, they moved to another house, and while they were cleaning up, he accidentally threw his hard drive disk away. This was a big mistake, because nowadays the 7,500 Bitcoins would be valued at a whopping 61 million euros. James tried to find his hard drive via the landfill in Wales where he lived, but this was no longer possible, and unfortunately, he lost all his money. The Baltic Ace was a huge cargo ship that collided with the container ship Corvus J on the Dutch North Sea in 2012. 15 minutes later, the ship sank with the 1,400 new Mitsubishi cars that were transported from Japan and Thailand. The wreck lays 40 miles or 65 kilometers off the Dutch coast at a depth of 115 feet or 35 meters on one of the busiest shipping lanes in the world. The cause would probably have been human error, but it's still unclear to this day how exactly this could have happened. In November of 2015, Rijkswaterstaat, together with Boskalis Nederland and Mammoet Salvage, ensured that the complete wreckage was removed from the bottom. Due to the winter weather conditions, this process would have lasted 2 whole summers. In 2014, the French railroad company SNCF is said to have made a huge mistake when they spent $15 billion on high-speed trains that didn't fit the rails. In fact, they had ordered 2,000 new trains that turned out to be too wide for the older train stations. Their excuse was that they were taking new railroads into account, while there were still a lot of older ones that needed to be served. This dumb mistake was also compared to ordering a car without checking your garage to see if the car would actually fit in it. This blunder cost the French government and the company an extra $69 million to solve this problem. It's of course a good idea to modernize train stations and railroads, but it's of course shameful that they didn't think about it before they decided to invest in so many trains at the same time. In 1867, an exchange took place between the United States and then Empire Russia that Russia probably regrets a lot today. In the 17th century, Alaska belonged to Russia, but only 3,000 people lived there. Because the piece of land would have been difficult to defend, and because the Russian Empire had money problems, the Emperor Alexander II decided to sell it to America during the Crimean War. The amount paid for this was $7.2 million, and at that time, both parties were satisfied with their choice. This amounts to 2 cents per 3,000 square feet, or 4,000 square meters. Imagine if today you could buy 13,000 square feet, or 4,000 square meters, for just 2 cents. That would be a joke. So, in my opinion, this is one of the most expensive mistakes in history. But at that time, people apparently didn't know that land was so valuable. The RYUGYONG Hotel, located in Pyongyang, North Korea, should be open by 2013. Construction began in 1987, and the goal was to have the 1,083-foot or 330-meter tall building ready for the Olympics. However, this project wasn't successful, and to this day, the 105-story building is the tallest unfinished building in the world. While it's unclear exactly what keeps going wrong with the hotel, it's a well-known fact that it houses an incredible 3,000 rooms. It's said to have cost North Korea over $750 million to make it a success. So it's a real shame to see such a large iconic building in the middle of the city that isn't even being used. Don't you think so? The Tower of Pisa, or should we say the Leaning Tower of Pisa, is one of the greatest construction mistakes in history, but the world loves it. The history of its construction goes all the way back to the year 1173. In the first few years of construction, everything went smoothly without any problems. The foundation had been placed, the first 2 floors were standing, but it wasn't until they started working on the 3rd floor that things went wrong. The structure began to lean towards one side. In 1185, numerous attempts were made to repair it, but none worked. Today we know that the fault was mainly in the soft soil on which the building stands. This is also the reason why it then took another 200 years to build until it was finally finished in 1370. In 1995, it was discovered that the construction fault was bigger than first thought. Not only was it leaning, but every year it moves a little, leading to the thought that it will eventually fall over. Designed by famed engineer Frank Gehry, the Walt Disney Concert Hall was intended to be a futuristic wonder that could glow at night. When it first opened in 2013 in Los Angeles, California, it received high praise. However, this shiny stainless steel exterior led to its demise. As it turned out, the stainless steel was reflective, and this caused the sunlight to reflect off the surrounding buildings. These sometimes got as hot as 140 degrees Fahrenheit, or 60 degrees Celsius, and it's not surprising that people started to complain. In some cases, it even led to lawsuits. You would think that building military barracks in the shape of a swastika would be easy to avoid, but apparently it wasn't. These buildings are located on the Coronado Naval Base in California. Construction began in the late 1960s, and it wasn't until many years later when people started using Google Maps that they realized the buildings looked very similar to a swastika from above. The Navy was forced to change it. In 2010, they decided to spend over $14 million to make it a plaza. But when I decided to take a look on Google Maps, I saw that the buildings are still there in the same formation. If you look at the following photo, you'll probably think this train track was photoshopped. But no. In September of 2010, the South Island of New Zealand was hit by a massive earthquake. This earthquake caused buildings and other things in the area that were poorly designed to be easily damaged. Many people tried to figure out how the train tracks could change so drastically, but no one had a clear answer. So it remains pretty incredible how Mother Nature could make the train tracks look like this. Unfortunately, I couldn't find if they have replaced the broken train tracks yet, but I assume that the train can just go through again. The MILLENNIUM suspension bridge is located over the River Thames in London, and is considered one of the biggest engineering blunders of all time. Opened on June 10th of the year 2000, the bridge was so poorly constructed that on opening day, it immediately began to wobble as soon as people stepped on it. Before this happened, the 1,050-foot or 320-meter-long bridge was considered a miraculous piece of engineering. On opening day, thousands of people arrived to celebrate the moment. The bridge seemed fine at first, but as more people stepped on it, it suddenly began to wobble slowly. The wobbling became more and more severe, and I hate to think of you getting stuck in the middle of the bridge while everyone was trying to cross safely. It turned out that the engineers had not taken into account the weight of thousands of people crossing the bridge. So the suspension bridge was closed, but in February of 2002, it was reopened after they fixed the wobble problem. The Mars Climate Orbiter was a NASA spacecraft that went into space unmanned in 1999 and ended up breaking into pieces. This cost NASA an incredible $125 million, and all because of a mistake that could have been easily avoided. The spacecraft was sent to Mars to study the planet wouldn't suddenly went up in smoke. But how could this happen, you're asking? NASA worked with a research institute that used a metric system of meters and millimeters. But in the United States, they use inches, feet, and pounds. So these were programmed incorrectly into the software, which caused the spacecraft to be destroyed. The Mars Climate Orbiter managed to last 10 months after launch, but the error caused it to get too close to Mars' atmosphere. Dubai is known for its glamorous nature. Everywhere you look, you see expensive hotels, designer stores, mansions, and cars worth millions of dollars. But Dubai was especially proud of its artificial islands that resembled those of the countries of the world. It was so big that it could be seen from space. But the billions of dollars that had been poured into them were probably wasted. These islands, with countless luxury homes and hotels, were meant for the richest people and could only be reached by boat. About 70% were said to have been sold, but after investigation, it was revealed that the islands were actually sinking. This is because the islands were made of a sand taken from the ocean. Everyone's probably familiar with the love story of Jack and Rose in the movie Titanic. This movie was based on a true story of the Titanic, which tragically sank like a brick to the bottom of the ocean after hitting an iceberg on the 5th day of its journey. On April 14, 1912, before the ship was lowered into the water, the builders claimed that it would never sink, regardless of the conditions at sea. Unfortunately, the ship did sink, and the main reason was for the watertight compartments. This is because they were not built with the possibility that the ship could be hit from below. So when the ship had a collision with the iceberg, at least 5 compartments caused the ship to begin sinking. At the top of this list is Chernobyl. How could it be otherwise? This tragic mistake cost hundreds of people their lives and thousands of people who had to leave their homes. The Chernobyl nuclear disaster occurred in 1986 in the Ukraine and was due to faulty design and human neglect. The Unit 4 reactor was operated by people who were not adequately trained. As a result, this reactor of the nuclear power plant exploded and caused the entire area to become radioactive. Today, many places are still off limits because of the radioactivity. And because no people live there anymore, the whole area has become taken over by nature. The buildings look abandoned, but according to several articles, some animals do live there, which may look mutated due to the radioactivity. What's the biggest mistake you've ever made in your life? Let us know in the comments. If you liked the video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more videos we've made, click one on the screen or take a look at the channel. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.